Good afternoon. Welcome to the Business BoardCast. I'm Nicky Larkin. Today, I'm very lucky. I have my colleague and, co-partner in succession planning, Nigel Elkes, with me. Hi, Nigel.
Hi, everyone. Hello. Hello, Nicky. Nice to be back. It's been a while.
Absolutely. Been on hiatus. We're back in the room.
Brilliant.
So today, obviously, we are focusing on succession planning area. So it's an area that people don't often think about when they're selling a business. They're very concerned with how to get the right price, who they're going to be selling to, etc., and don't think so much about what is their life going to look like post-sale. So today, Nigel's got lots of really great tips of things that you need to prepare for and plan for and to be thinking about to make sure that it's not going to be all a big shock to you. So where would you like to start, Nigel?
Well, I suppose just kicking off, going through the business sale process, we do actually get quite close to our sellers, and generally over the period of the time the business is for sale and through negotiations and everything, generally, and we don't want this to put people off, but generally we develop quite a bond with our buyers, with our sellers, and we do, yeah. Towards the end, it is with the buyers as well. But in the first bit, the sellers, and I suppose one word of warning, even sellers from 5-6 years ago, they're still good friends, and we still, keep in touch and everything. So, but the point of it is, at a certain time through the process, you sort of have to start thinking about what the other side looks like post sale and be prepared for it, because a lot does change, and it's just and some of it will be common sense that everybody's aware of, but some of it, and I think we'll go through it during this, will be things that you might not have thought of. And so I think it's good ground to cover and a useful tip for people selling their business. So well, if you don't mind me starting, Nicky, I think the first thing is when we're approached by somebody who wants to sell, I think the first question is, what is the plan afterwards? And if somebody's of a certain age, similar to myself, then they'd have the obvious plan, and they kind of want to maybe reduce some of their responsibilities of running big teams and having big companies and being responsible for that balance sheet, be it, the sort of incoming money, but also the liabilities. So there's a time when I think we're all ready to move away from that. But equally, if somebody is probably sub 50, maybe mid 40s, we generally question that as a starting point, because where else would they earn that money unless they've got a defined plan, they want to get out the sector, and they've got a golden opportunity. It's rare that they will replicate the monies that they're earning at the moment within their enterprise. So I think firstly there's that qualification process, because we don't want to put people off, but equally we want them to be sure in their own mind before they make that jump and big move. And in fairness, as you know, Nicky, we would probably get 30, 50. I think recently one company have had 120 inquiries for. So all that process takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and we want to be sure that everybody, for the buyer's sake as well, that everybody is focused on that is the main end goal. And so I think if you are too young, you've really got to question yourself, can I earn that money elsewhere? And it's probably, if you've been successful, it's kind of quite hard to replicate that lifestyle. So I think there's that sort of qualification first.
I think this, because we do get a lot of people that they've set up a business, or they've inherited the business or whatever, and they're really looking to move on. Obviously, it's different when it's a serial entrepreneur and they're selling because they've already got their next project in mind. So it's slightly different. We're not really so much today talking about the serial entrepreneur that's got the next project that's happening. This is for you're exiting your business, and that is sort of you're looking at the new age of your in your
The
life.
new landscape. The new
Yes.
landscape.
Completely.
um,
Completely. So what other things should they be preparing for, Nigel?
well, I think it kind of splits between the business side of things and the personal, and the business side of things is quite well voiced and a well trodden path. So I think the one crux is just ensure you don't have any regrets, and so make sure you're happy with the structure, you're happy with your broker, you're happy with the team that are acting for you, you're happy with the sort of suggested outcome. And sometimes it's not a question of this is the value of a business. It's also saying what the market is at the time, and also the longevity of the sector. So I think there's a lot of considerations in that, and there's a lot of business considerations, but I think the purpose of this is really on the personal side of things.
Yeah.
So I think if we just run through some of those, because you're right, we're talking about people who've had the business for maybe a decade or two, or maybe 3 decades, so a long time. And the business, it'll be a big part of you, and you'll have that emotional attachment, and you'll probably say, well, I'm running so many people, I just want out and everything. But it's kind of been your identity, and it's also been your day-to-day purpose, perhaps from when you've grown it from a spare bedroom or the garage at your parents' house or whatever it may have been. And also that day-to-day routine, that structure, a big part of your life will suddenly then change, and it will suddenly then dilute.
It's almost like empty nest syndrome. It's a similar sort of thing. Once all your children go, it is like your other child, your business. So you've really got to prepare yourself for that situation.
Absolutely. And I think at the point of completion, there's then also that transition where you'll be working for the business, but the role will gradually change, and it will, because it will diminish in responsibility, but it also diminish in the fact that you're then probably not needed as much, and then some of your team are going to somebody else, and some of that can actually then start to have it would have an effect on your mental health. So it's also, which we'll come to, is having some little things in your toolbox that obviously help you get over that and everything. And one of them, in fairness, I always say to people is, when you've run your business for 20 or 30 years, there will be a transition, but we want to all try and make that as short as possible. We dilute it down. And I think generally, as long as you make yourself available to the buyers, then they're happy as well, because it is also a new regime. They're coming in and they're seizing the opportunity of running your business, but also they may have other ideas, integration ideas, diversification, and to move it forward. So, and I think we'd all agree that in the majority of businesses, if anybody came in from outside and put a fresh pair of eyes on the business, there's certain things they could pick out. There's always something that could be done differently, could be done not always better, but generally there's things to introduce. So that's what a buyer would want to do, and would probably want a clear run at that. I think the caveat there is also sort of saying, right, how many people are selling this business? Is it actually a family business? What are the effects on the family? Do they want the responsibility? Do they want to carry it on? And that's kind of a double-edged sword as well, because often there's a certain time scale for a lot of sectors and product maturity, and obviously then the decline in sectors. So it's considering all those sort of factors, and also, do you want to put that responsibility on your children, that then they've got to carry on the mantle, they've got to do better. Where can they go? If you've done as well as possible, it's quite a poison chalice to then pass on down the family sometimes. It depends on the size of the business and what it does and where the shareholding sits. But if you're saying probably sub 10 million and it's stayed within the family, it's quite a hard gig for people to carry on, and certainly the next generation to carry it on. So I think also it's important to understand what you are giving to your children might not be the sort of the ideal scenario that as a business owner you think it is. So I think
we have had our first question come in, Nigel.
Oh, super. It's probably got me up, I think.
Yeah, so we want to filter these in as they come. So Tim's got a great question, very specifically to the actual sale. Does the transfer of undertakings 2P legislation feature significantly in selling a business with employees? And I think we should talk about that, but also about what that means to the director owner as well. So do you want to take that, Nigel? Or
yeah. Either way, but I think it's a very good question, and one of the prime things that both sides really need to be thinking about. And I think for buyers as well, when looking at companies, the sort of responsibility for the amount of employees, again, it is obviously considerable. So I think what I would say is, in an answer, it's a significant part of selling a business. The employees then go across, if they've been with the business a long time, and we're talking businesses of sort of 20 or 30 years, it's a lot of responsibility for that undertaking as you buy a business. So it's kind of significant, and I think it's more probably from the buyer's point of view as to having a breakdown on those sort of things than the sellers, but it also adds to the profile of the opportunity often with companies, because there's various sectors where resourcing is and recruiting is difficult and scarce, and so if you have a good team, good employees that have been with the company a long time and they're all comfortable, quite often that's one of the main selling points of a business. So it's
I just sort of tack on to that. So generally what we're doing usually is selling the actual company, so the limited company, so therefore the employees go with that. But of course there is the exceptions where people are buying assets from the company and not actually buying the whole company, and so sometimes there are reasons to only buy the assets and not the company, and therefore you're not having to 2P across the employees. The other thing that some buyers like is, if you've got some dead wood in your company, if you have already been through that painful redundancy process before you come to sale. And two advantages of that is that it means the seller is not having to go through that and not being seen as the bad guy. Also, then you're really showing that that's true savings to the buyer, so therefore you potentially can up your price a bit. The downside, of course, is that you are having to do it, and it is going to cost you. You're having to take it out of your balance sheet, that cost of that redundancy. We've got another question, Nigel.
Wow.
Before you get to all other things, because I know, but I think this is covered in one of what things that you're going to do anyway, so it's quite nicely fits in. So Nick's asking, we recognise this chap too. Are there any points sellers should be aware of if they plan to embark on a new business venture in the same or a closely related sector?
I think Nick's been reading my notes. I think and it's a very good question, Nick. And I think twofold, because hopefully you've also had a considerable amount of money for your business, and so all of a sudden you've got your hopefully pot of money, and suddenly you've got to become an investor. Now, if you've done that over the years and looked at stocks and shares and had things and been a sort of a saver and invested and done your bit, then you're probably well versed with it. And a lot of people will have done, but equally a lot of business owners are 24/7 in their business and generally haven't sometimes looked over the parapet at what the rest of the world's doing. So I think there's two things. Suddenly you're thrown into the investment market. So, and again, what we would say, and we always say it's sort of part of the process, have the directors, have the shareholders got a good IFA, maybe have two, because you're considering about a large pot of money and then just getting sort of different takes on what the market's doing and everything. So I think that from the investment side of things. Now, the other side of it, which I think Nick was more alluding to, is because you've been successful in your business and you've done well, other sectors and can seem sort of quite glossy on the outside, and maybe you've sort of had inspiration to sort of get into another sector, but I think without the experience within it, I think we should all tread with care, because to suddenly then learn a different sector and go into a new business and everything is difficult, unless you're more on the investment side of things and you're with somebody who's then got the knowledge and you want to go into another venture. But again, I think that's age dependent, and maybe when somebody's selling when they're sort of my age in late 50s, you kind of don't want to be hands-on in the same way you have been for the last 30 years or so. So that kind of, it is to be beware of new sectors and new challenges, really.
Just going back to Nick's question as well, is I would just point out that you usually are given restrictions against certainly setting up for business for a few years. So bear in mind, it's not that you can sell your business, set it up, another one next door tomorrow. That you will have clear restrictions. There are different restrictions though, whether you are doing something in that sector. So you need to be very specific. If you are intending to still do something because you are a trained, whatever it is, an architect or an engineer or something, and you want to still keep your hand in and work on perhaps a consultancy basis, it's best to be honest with the buyer and make sure that the clauses cover that, so that you're not going to be in breach of contract with that. So for example, we know that one seller that we sold last year, they knew that they still wanted to do something in that field, but for a very different part of the sector. It was working with more sort of bank level type clients and things. So they were able to write that into the contract so that she was still safe on that. So it's best to be thinking about your options. It doesn't mean that you have to do that, but it's good to have your options open.
I think that's exactly right, and I think with the right buyer, and often it'll come out in the process. They'll want to know what the seller's aspirations are going forward, or what they want to do, because one, they don't want the challenge of having to then impose. Well, they will impose the restrictions, but I think they want the comfort of knowing that the seller is probably not pursuing another business within the sector or doing the same again, and it'll be part of the sale. And obviously the sale wouldn't go through if they were doing that. And I think with any sale and any situation, it's kind of just ensuring that both parties are really transparent. They're transparent with everything that's gone on within the company and from the buyer's point of view, and that obviously all helps us sort of towards a successful sale. So yeah, I think it's good to be clear about what your plans are for the future.
I've been surprised recently, because obviously all the stuff we get involved in, both sides have lawyers, and they have, you know, really detailed SPAs and post agreements about either whether they're going to be a consultant, an employee, or if they're leaving. But I'm surprised. I've seen a few recently where they didn't even have all of that information, and as a buyer, it's not sensible for you to do that because you need to keep yourself safeguarded. So, you know, it's important both sides. Okay, what other areas do we need to be thinking about, Nigel?
Well, I think we've probably covered a little bit on the sort of you know, the personal side, on the mental health, and a little bit on the investments. But I think actually the mental health, and we know of people who have struggled when they've sold their business.
Yeah,
and it's
very,
huge.
very common.
Ugh. So and that's kind of at the sort of the final sort of few months of the sale, we kind of focus on that quite a bit, and it's important to sort of plan new goals. So there's the obvious ones that people say, I'm just going to take some time out and then think, and the obvious things to sort of travel or do sports or charity work, etc. But yeah, you really need to kind of give that a lot of thought and definition, because post sale it kind of goes quiet, and it's then, as we were saying and alluded to, you know, your team are going to somebody else, they're not ringing you, and some of it, you know, we'd all think, well, that's quite welcome, but actually you've probably, in your day-to-day life, your business is what you've thought about every day. You know, at the weekends you're still thinking, oh, how do I do that, I must sort that out and everything. So also that's taken away. So it's not even people coming to you, it's all your thought processes and everything, and going through that transition of not being in such demand. So it's kind of filling that, and that could be with your investments, it could be working with your IFA, it could be in buying property and doing things. But I think it's important to have that mix of everything and a little bit of a plan, and not just think, well, as soon as it's done, I'm away. And if travel is your thing, then that's great, and you know, it may cover it. But I think generally you can't underestimate the effect it has on your mental health.
And most business owners, they like being busy and doing lots of stuff, and they get, I mean, some like to go on holiday, but a lot just, I mean, can't cope with more than a week on holiday or whatever. So but there are things like retirement coaches and stuff. So if you are really struggling or really worried that this might have an impact, it is good to have a coach or somebody else that you can plan and think and brainstorm with to make sure you are covered, and you're not going to have that, you know, we hear a lot, don't we? People get their money, they go for a nice long holiday, come back, and then they're like, well, what now? And that's when they go in their downward cycle of what, you know, you need to always have something to look forward to. I mean, that's why my gran lived so long. She always had something to look forward to.
Which is, and it's keeping busy, and it's keeping active, it's keeping positive, it's all those things, but that applies to all of us. So yeah, I think but it's a very big one, and it's a big, when you've run your own business and developed it, and it's, you've lived and breathed it for the last 30 years, that's, you can't underestimate the sort of gap that will leave in your life. So that's probably the most important one.
I know a lot of business owners that are planning for their post-sale life, but they are seeing it as a different transition. So for like one lady who's got a couple of different businesses, I know she's really planning on building up her writing part that she does, because she does a lot of writing, and you know, it's good to, sometimes as well, it's scary to think of that's the end. So whereas if you've got new things, it just helps with that frame of mind. It gives you the opportunity, whether it's, you're going to become charity trustees or run the parish council or whatever it's going to be. You know, there's so many different things you can be doing. I've really got a huge list. I can't imagine. I still will not be a lady that lunches.
Well, no, and I think it is all about keeping busy. And like you say, it's in most business owners' DNA that they are busy people. They like to be active. They like to be doing the next thing. And so it's kind of filling that gap, which is, obviously important.
So do you want to go through your top 3 things, or obviously anything else that we haven't covered yet? But I think we've covered most things.
We've covered all the sort of personal ones. I think what I'd probably say is the first one of the points is just not to have any regrets. So you've built this business up for 20, 30 years. Just make sure you give it to somebody who is then, so your business then carries on. Your employees are in safe hands. Through the transition, pick a broker, maybe like ourselves, who has that empathy and understands the sort of the whole picture and the picture of really, what the best deal and the best outcome looks like, which isn't often just the top price. It's a mix of everything, and ensuring that, really everything you've built up is then in safe hands. And I think from a selfish point of view, it's ensuring that you get any deferred payments that are due to you. So your whole deal and your whole consideration is then paid out. And it's just ensuring, you've got a good understanding with the buyer. And as we said earlier, some of that will need that little bit of transition where you're available. So I'd probably say that's point 1. Just make sure you don't have any regrets. And chatting to people like ourselves, we can take you through the learnings and everything, and the stages, and that's kind of, you just need somebody holding your hand there. Second would be have a plan and keep busy. And even if you over plan, I think that's better than under planning. And being a busy person, to all of a sudden not have that sort of occupation of running your company and everything that's involved is a big hole. So I think have a plan and over plan and make sure you're busy. And the third thing is, really you've worked for, so many years, and you've built it up, you've looked after people. It's not just the employees that you sort of are there when you sell the business. It's all the employees that you've employed along the way, the contribution to the economy, the responsibility of all that. And, you deserve to enjoy it. So I think that's the third point is to really enjoy what you've put together. And the retirement, but it is, as we just alluded to, probably by keeping busy, by being on charitable trusts, by holidaying and sports and different hobbies. So but if you're the sort of person that's run your own business, that would all probably come naturally. And
but you need to be ready to emotionally move on, because there's no point keep going up through the scenarios of, what if I waited another 2 years or went to the second buyer or whatever? That's a hiding to nowhere. You've got to be comfortable with your decision and make I was going to say make jam. Don't know why I'm making jam, but yeah, that could be a thing they might be doing.
It might be, yeah.
I can't. Just you get so sticky when you're trying to make jam and stuff. I don't think that would be.
It wouldn't be on my list, but
I can remember my mum making lots of strawberry jam. Anyway, thank you so much, Nigel. Thank you very much for the great questions we've had today as well. It's absolutely fantastic. It's really good. And welcome back to it. We're going to get you on again in the next month or two for another topic. There's lots of stuff happening. The next business broadcast is Make Tax Digital, and I'm joined by our tax manager, Olivia Evans. She's going to go through what that means to a lot of people. Lots of people will be seeing it, and also what hopefully you'll find is a lot of people will find that they don't need to worry about it. So hopefully it'll allay a lot of people's fears and worries as well on that. And also I will be sorting out a one-off regarding, because there is the spring statement on the 26th of March. So I will make sure that either I will do a special business broadcast, or I'll double check if Berkshire Growth Hub are running one. If they are, then I'll give you the details. There's no doubt I'll be doing that. But thank you so much, everybody. Great to see you all, and have a lovely weekend. Thank you, Nigel.
Cheers. Bye, everyone.